Can we talk about photography?
Yeah, we can absolutely.
So we'll go into some of the businessy type stuff because I know people might want to pick your brains about how you did create Instagram, has it been useful, that kind of thing. But
Sure.
how did you almost get into it in the first place?
So that's a long and complicated question, but I'll try and keep it brief. But growing up, mum always loved pictures, so we just had those all over the house all the time. There's still like albums, loads of albums, um, and at family events and stuff, people would throw me the camera and tell me to go nuts. So I think that was where the seeds were kind of initially planted. And then also, and I'm sure we'll go into it as well. I had did the photography business with yourself at university as well, and I think that added a little bit more. That was another kind of seed being planted. And then my time in Nigeria and Canada, I just found myself with my iPhone 4 at the time. Fantastic piece of tech that is. Just trying to capture every moment I could. And once I kind of got back to Sheffield to finish my final year, I found myself now taking pictures of Sheffield with my phone. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is something I'm doing now, and that it was that made me really really dive into photography as an art form,
Yeah.
and really understand the nuts and bolts of it.
Because
Um,
one of the things that I find quite funny before the call, we were talking about kit and setups and stuff because I'm into
yeah,
it as well.
sure.
And it's that balance of it's so much better. It's not about the kit. It's the one thing that people always think is that you need a £2,000 DSLR and an expensive
Oh,
lens. Especially modern phones. Old
mhm.
phones were crap, but
Yeah,
regardless. But the thing is, you can have fun and take pictures with anything. And it's
absolutely.
so much more about, for me at least, the creativity and the angles and the way that you see the world. That
Mhm.
you might, for instance, take the picture of it, but you have to have the vision to see the shot before you take it. And I was
Absolutely.
just interested, because you now do it more full time than I do. I do a lot more video now. But
Sure.
almost, why do you love it?
I think being able to capture a moment, it's just I there's something about it, and I don't even have the vocabulary, I think, to really describe the feeling that it gives you. But when you
When you
capture
nail it.
something, yeah, and it just and the emotion that it stirs when you look at it, it's hard to describe. But certainly that, and then also the ability to kind of have a vision or an idea in your head and then see it, all come together in front of you. Um, I mean, it's like an out of body experience at times. It's just an otherworldly feeling to have. So I love that feeling that photography gives me. And then on the other side of it, I guess if you want to call it the softer side of it, I like to think that I'm a people person. I think most people who know me will probably say I'm a people person, but you'd have to ask them to be sure. But I really enjoy like interacting with all sorts of different people, and through my sort of photography journey, I've been able to do a lot of that. So really, there's multiple reasons why I really love it. But yeah, every time I'm able to catch something that
Mm.
I visualized, like I was, and bring that into reality. That's a feeling that I can't match.
Yeah. Because I must say, what I think is quite funny is that because when I was doing my PhD, obviously we started the uni photos. And
Yeah,
say with that, it was black tie balls, graduations. But essentially, there's a huge difference between when you have the studio lights, which actually I still have some. I bought some recently when I do
that's
business stuff.
cool. I
But
bought
it's like a
stuff.
production line where essentially you set your camera's settings up
Yeah,
and you just click and it just goes. And for me, what was funny is as a student, okay, we used to make money doing it, but I didn't have a passion for it because actually there wasn't that much skill to it. You start to
no,
learn how to do it, but once you've done that bit,
yeah,
but when I used to photograph weddings, I used to really love the skill and the challenge and get a blurred foreground background and getting the moment and just watching a room and almost the pressure of it.
absolutely.
But the thing that used to get me was that when you would show the bride or whoever a technically brilliant photo and they're like, meh.
To say about this.
And then when you see their Facebook page, this is the one thing that really got me about it, is
Yeah.
that they'll have a really crappy low lit phone selfie from a nightclub because they like how they look. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that you kind of realize with photography, it's a diminishing returns thing that people like what they like. And it's just,
Yeah.
it can be difficult as the person that creates it
Yeah.
when people don't always reciprocate.
I have to say I definitely approach doing a photography job for someone versus like a personal project. I approach those with two fairly different mindsets, and I actually think this is where my career as a consultant helps me quite a lot. So ultimately, you know, when you're doing a job for somebody, um, you're delivering them a product which they want, basically. So how you feel about the photo doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously, you know, as a photographer with some pride in their product, you know, you have certain standards that you want to that you absolutely have to reach from a quality
Mm-hmm.
perspective and so on. Um, but I've often found that my eye is very different to the eye of, you know, whoever's paying. But ultimately, if they're happy with what's been produced, then I've done my job on that
Yeah.
front. So you almost have to remove that emotion out of it a bit, when you're doing a job with for somebody. Whereas with a personal project, you can, you know, you can go right into the
Mm-hmm.
nth degree of detail, and, you know, if that's not perfect, you know, you do it again and whatever. But yeah, as you said that, it just really hit me because I've had I was doing a shoot literally just the other day, where there were a couple of photos which were a little bit, they're a bit blurry. I hadn't quite caught them right, and they just loved it. The customers just, oh, this is great, this is amazing. It's, you know, sometimes you just have to kind of remove that emotion out of it and just say, okay, this is what I'm producing for this customer. If they're happy with it, then I'm happy.
Because so the guy called Christopher Owens that takes my photos in Sheffield, that not
Right.
Sheffield, Newcastle. I don't know why I said that. But you know, so and he does a lot of magazine stuff up here, and for me in the region, he's the best at doing what he does. But one of the reasons why I love working with him is that I know that he knows that I appreciate his craft.
Right.
And whilst we're doing the photos, we talk about lighting and setups, and I will try anything because in advance we'll talk about what the look and feel is like and what the brand
Yeah.
is like. Because what was also interesting when you're creating imagery for a brand, I know I approached you on Instagram to stuff you'd already done,
Mm.
but for me, when I was trying to come up with all of the imagery and backstory to go with, all of it at the time was in my head,
Yeah.
and I was trying to describe to the photographer, this is the look I want. I don't want it to be polished. I want it to be fairly urban, and it was just, he nailed it. And
Mm.
it's just, I love working with someone where you kind of, you have a brief, but then
Yeah.
likewise again, I always try and give the creative run with it, you know, because I know
Yeah.
that you're better at that than I am. But
Yeah.
what was really interesting for me was that when I was creating the brand, I'd work with the company to the logo and stuff.
Mm.
But so much of a company brand is through the photography that goes with it. And one of my
Absolutely.
real pet peeves is that when you see either poor photography that's poor technically,
Yeah.
or it's really cheesy and staged.
Right.
And you know exactly what I'm talking
I
about.
know exactly what you mean.
And then it basically, it was just by chance. I was just, as you do, scrolling through Instagram, and I started to watch your stuff.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember how long it was, and I just reached out to you and said, "Can I buy some of your photos?" But like, you know, because one of the big things that ask you about how you promote the business or the side hustle anyway. But
Sure.
for me, Instagram is a great way to discover other creatives. So for instance, when you shoot with the model,
Mm.
if the photos are good, I'll tend to follow them. And
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing of where I never know where this business is going to go in 5 years' time.
Mm.
But I do look for people with talent. And
Mm.
they kind of, at least for me, I keep them on my radar. And the one thing about photography as well, because I'm really picky,
Yeah.
I can see when someone's bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it,
100%.
but it almost, so when you approach the people that you photograph on Instagram,
Mm.
which is the kind of look and feel, I'll try and show one. I know there's one at the back of the book, which
Sure.
was, for instance, that one. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
obviously I put the light pathway over the pictures. Do you
Sure.
class that as just one of your personal projects?
So that particular one was part of a commission job, but most of the ones that I will post on my Instagram, in fact, I would say 90% of them are personal projects or just stuff that I've done for my portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is paid. Some of it is a case of, you know, something that I've had in my head happens to be what a customer wants. Great, happy days. Other times it's just an idea that has rattled around in my head for so long that I've got to do it. You probably understand. You know, when you get a creative itch and it's like I've got to if I
Yeah.
don't exercise this right now, this, it's going to be trouble. So
Like, how do you pick who you shoot with?
honestly, I go honestly by instinct. It's all very instinctive. So if I see a face and I can picture that face somewhere, or in a particular way, or in a particular form, or in a particular setting, or with particular lighting, if I get that image in my head, and it usually does happen
Mm,
within a couple of seconds, I reach out to that person immediately,
yeah.
and that's how I found most of the people that I shot with. So when I decided I was gonna do this as a side hustle, I made a little message, a little sort of pro forma that I would just send out, and as soon as I saw a face, I would send a message on Instagram, and I actually did that. I crossed that over into real life. I made these little cards, which so while I was out and about, just doing my thing, going to the
Mm,
shop, going out, whatever,
picking up
uh,
girls.
going to the client. Not well, obviously not just girls, Steve, obviously, but I mean, I've even given one to a bus driver before, where
Oh,
the guy,
nice.
the guy looked like he should have been on the front cover of a magazine, and I couldn't understand why he was there driving a 422. And I slid him a card as well. I literally put a card together. It said, here's where you can find my portfolio, and here's what I've done so far. If you want to work with me, just drop me a message. So I go with my creative instinct on that. I try not to overthink it. I think once it pops into my head, if I think it's a good idea, I do it pretty much immediately.
I'm trying to find, because I'm trying. There we go. Because the one thing that gets me, so that was the first photo I ever bought off you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But because the one thing that gets me, and was that it sucked me in, was that for one, it's anyone can get lucky with one photo,
Yeah.
but it's when you can create a body of work, or in this instance, a lot. So I've bought 22 photos, I think, so far. But the idea is, but they all look the same, feel the same, part of the same body of, and it's that in terms of business company stuff is
Yeah.
branding,
Yes.
that it's hard to fake and it's hard to do well, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
the other side to it as well, it's when you're looking at who relates to what you're trying to create, and it's there's so much around that, and I think you can't fake it. So even if I went to hire a photographer in Newcastle and said, "Oh, go and hire some models and we'll go and take some pictures," it's
Yeah.
so difficult for me. And this is someone that's done it, and also I know people that when they've had the picture taken, a lot of people feel uncomfortable when
Yeah.
they're in front of the camera.
Yeah.
That actually it's really hard to make people feel comfortable enough
Hmm.
to take 800 photos, but we're
Hmm.
looking for 40 good ones.
Yeah.
And it's try this, try that, do that. And that's a real skill when you were saying about being a people person before.
Yeah.
That likewise, I know how hard it is, and you can't teach that ability to just make people feel comfortable, but yet also see the eye for it. And the other thing as well, it's quite rare that you have someone with the engineering academic brain
Mm.
and the creativity. And I've been told that I kind of have that, but again, that's quite rare that you get both sides of the brain.
I,
That
I I actually think that that they're not as opposite as a lot of people would
I agree.
think. I think there's a real science to what makes a good picture in general, and I actually I almost liken it to problem solving, taking a good picture. If I'm in a relatively dark room for an event, for example, and I'm trying to get some good pictures, and I don't have my on camera flash,
Yeah.
then I need to figure out, okay, what shutter speed am I going to get a solid enough image? Okay, given the equipment I have available, how high can I crank the ISO really? And okay, like so you have to take your different parameters based on where you
Mm,
are and come up with a solution for it. So there's definitely I'm not going to say there's no creative element to it. That'd be a ridiculous thing to say. Of course there is, and I think that bit is really fun, layering that into the more problem solving side of it. But I actually see a lot of it as problem solving in the sense that I have a solution I want to get to.
yeah.
I have a place where I'm at the moment. I have these set of parameters. Almost sounds like a mass balance from a chemical engineering
Yeah.
problem. I have these parameters. I have these starting materials. This is where I'm trying to get to. What do I need to do
Hmm.
to get from here to here? Yeah.